Welcome to Biomedical Tutor. This is a site for biomedical sciences tutorial. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us thumbs up, hit the notification button so that whenever we upload new video, you can get notification on our videos. So in today's lecture, we are going to be looking at biology, the introduction to biology. That is specifically the view of life. So let's get started. Biology, as a field of study, comes from two Greek words. That is bio, which means life, and logos, which means study. So biology as a discipline of science is the scientific study of life. So that is biology cross across understanding the field of life, understanding how life evolves, understanding the living organisms that are diversified on earth, understanding their behavior, understanding the way in which they do things, understanding what the way in which they are affected by sickness. So biology cross a whole lot of things that living things does, right? So let's look at biology consists of many disciplines and area of specialties because of life has numerous aspects. So therefore, in order to understand biology, as we have understood that it is the scientific study of life, that is biology give us understanding about living things, right? So if we want to understand biology more specifically, we must understand that biology has disciplines. So in order to understand how biology involved with the study of life, we must understand those disciplines that are linked with biology. So biology branches include numerous of disciplines. So there are few that I've just listed here that we can go through. And we have cytology. So cytology is basically the study of cells, as we understand that cells is a fundamental unit of life. So as cytology studies cell, it goes deeply to understand how cell function, how the structure of the cell is like, and how they carry on those biological processes that keep them carry on reproduction or cell division or that of their metabolic process. So that is for cytology. So if you study cytology on biology, you will understand how cell function, the structure of the various cells in living organisms, and the way they use those biomolecules to keep them alive. So another one is anatomy. Anatomy here. So anatomy is the study of structure. So all living organisms are diversified in different structures. So therefore, living organism structures is a key component in studying biology. That is, if you want to understand how a cat or a dog structure or dog is like, you must also understand the structure of these various organisms, because they are various in structures and some are different, some are similar in structures. So therefore anatomy look deeply at the various structures that form the organism. That is, anatomy study the structure of the heart, the location of the body parts, the various cavities that lies within an organism body, etc. So molecular biology is a study of genes and the function at the molecular level. So we know that genes is the genetic material of an organism. That is, a gene is that kind of coding that contains the blueprint that makes an organism. So in case you are an engineer and you want to build a house, you have a blueprint that is a sample of what you have drawn down to build that beautiful structure. Therefore, the genes of an organism is that blueprint formed within the nucleus of the cell. That is, it is formed in one of the major macromolecule that we refer to as nucleic acid. So molecular biology goes at the molecular level, understanding how the blueprint of an organism is encoded. So let's look at physiology, the study of function, how the human body, how living organism function, the way in which when you take drugs, the drugs affect your system, the way in which when you eat the food, how the food is broken down, the various processes that are involved in breaking down the food, and the various processes are involved in muscles contraction, etc. So physiology look at the function of an organism. Then botany, the study of plants. Botany, it goes across understanding the various species of plant that are on earth. It is involved in understanding how plants are classified. It is involved in understanding how the plants are reproduce, the way in which they live, and then the amount of time in which it takes for some to die, some to live, etc. There is a very huge field of biology. And we have zoology, that is the study of animal, the understanding the various classification of animals, that is from vertebrate or invertebrate organisms to understanding the higher class of phylums of animal, that is chordata, specifically vertebrata. So we in all of this field of study, this is something that I want you to understand. In when you are in high school, you understand that biology has three major divisions that much of these branches or disciplines of biology might also fall on. So these major division of biology, one is a zoology. Zoology is one of the major division. We have botanics and major division, and we also have microbiology. Because when you look at zoology in that of botanic, you will also study physiology, you will look at anatomic, and you will also look at cytology. So that's it. So let's define life. Life in biology, we understand that life, biology study life or living organism. So for something to be living, that means that organism must have life. Therefore, even a child can understand or can distinguish living thing from a non-living thing. So if that is the case, in our lecture today, there is a question: life, is there any definition that suit the understanding of the simplicity of life, or is there any way we can define life? No. The answer is just no. Life defies a simple one sentence definition. Therefore, how can we understand that this thing is living, or how can we understand that this thing is not living? In biology, we use what we call concept. And this concept in biology is like things. They are features or characteristics that we use to understand various concepts in biology. So to understand what is a life, you see, life is recognized by living, by what living things do. So a living organism, the characteristic of that living organism, what it does is very significant to determine whether it is living or it is not what living. So life is recognized by those things that living things do. And what are some of those things that living things do? One, we look at the order of the living thing. That is one of the characteristics. We look at the regulation. We look at the energy processing of an organisms. We look at the growth and reproduction, uh, which is growth and development. We look at reproduction. We look at response to the environment. We look at evolutionary adaptation. So let's go into this one by one as we get understanding on it. So let's look at order. If you see this sunflower here, is very beautiful, structured, and well organized. This organism is a very organized form of an organism. So therefore, in the characteristics of order, that we understand that a living organism should be organized. That is, ranging from the most fundamental level to the most complex level, whether that organism is a single celled organism or that organism is a multicellular organism. The organism must be organized. It must be organized according to the level of complexity. So if you look at this organism, from the cell level to the structure, the proteins level, you look at the way in which the organism appear, it is well organized and structured. So, and another thing we look at to identify whether an organism is alive is we look at the evolutionary adaptation of the organism. So that is this organism you see in here, and it has adapted to the environment that it lives in to suit this organism survival. So therefore, if and you look at evolution, you know that it's a change where it's a changes that organism go through over a period of time. So this organism has to adapt to the environment, and in subsequent time, generation of the organism has come with a gene that have code for the environment, the environment camouflage. So therefore, this organism here has made itself to be suitable in the environment so that there is no predator can harm this organism. That is what we call evolutionary adaptation. So if you were to live in a cold region, that means your body must be able to adapt to the cold region. If your body is not able to adapt to the cold region, then we must be facing serious problem, and that might even lead to death. So it is a characteristic that a living organism should be able to possess. Then we look at the response to the environment. Now, every organism must be able to respond to the environment. If you see this organism, there's a dragonfly is while moving, it try to maybe rest within this organism, and then you observe that the dragonfly was trapped by the organism that respond to environment. Likewise, we human being, our body respond to environment. Like some human, when the surrounding is cool, their intent, when the surrounding is cool, their body regulate according to the environment, and some body does not regulate according to the environment. Therefore, if you have a very cool environment, what do you think will happen to the human body? You understand that the human body will try to regulate itself to produce more heat so that the internal environment cannot get colder. So that is what we call response. You must be able to detect, an organism must be able to detect danger, something that is cool, water, that is a very unique characteristic of a living organism. Then we look at reproduction. Reproduction, one of the key factor in the understanding of a living organism. For something to be living, that means this organism must be able to reproduce. Therefore, evolution we has to do with the change of period or the changes of an organism over the period of time is highly involved with reproduction, because within a population there must be organisms that are reproducing so that the population and the generation can goes on. But if there is no organism reproducing, that means the organisms that are living in that particular environment over a period of time will go into extinct. Therefore, the ability of an organism must be able to reproduce. Whether this organism reproduce sexually or asexually, that is just a concept. But the fact is that the organism should be able to reproduce. Bacteria, algae, fungus, and other organisms, they all reproduce. That's about the form they reproduce in, but it is a key characteristic of a living organism. Then another thing is the growth and development, which of course sometimes tell students that when you are growing and you are not developing, it is a serious characteristic of growth development problem, because growth and development are simultaneous and they must occur together. So therefore, your growth and your development, you as you eat nutrients, therefore you should be able to grow accordingly, and your body system should be able to develop as you are growing. That is another unique aspect of. So another characteristics that determine whether an organism is living or this organism is there is the energy processing of the organism. How organism harvest energy. So when you look at this a bread, you observe that it is picking or sucking the nectar within this plant. That is a form of carbohydrate that it is obtaining in its system. Then this carbohydrate will help power this bread to flight. You see that? So you cannot be an organism if you cannot process energy, if you cannot harvest energy, or if you cannot provide energy for yourself or take it from any other sources to be converted in your body. If you cannot do that, then that organism cannot survive, because every organism, whatever that organism does, depends on the level of energy in the body. That is in the form of what we call ATP, the energy processing system. We must have the ATP to carry on whole lot of activities in our body. So even when you are breaking down a glucose to harvest energy and stuff, you must be able to use energy to do that. So in the form, we release energy in the form of heat that we'll also talk about in this introductory video. So introductory to biology is a very unique course that we must look at, and then look at one of the characteristics again, that is a regulation. Organism must be able to regulate. Like you look at response, you response is for organism to obtain signal from its environment, detect signal from any environment, like we discussed about the dragonfly and that plant that was captured into the dragonfly was captured into the plant. So organism must also be able to regulate, because when you can respond to no danger, to know whether this thing is safe or this thing is not safe, then you must also be able to regulate your internal environment. That is, if an organism is experiencing cold, the organism must be able to adjust by regulating the level of heat in the body. If the organism glucose level is low, and the organism should be able to regulate the product, to regulate the release of energy within the body. Like you observe the glucagon within the pancreas, what it does, right? So when level of glucose is very low and there's an energy storage in the human body, it will help. There will be a regulation, and a signal will be sent to adaptate it so that I can release some glucose within energy within the human body, right? So regulation, if you look at this animal is using its ears to regulate or to detect the environment and regulate its internal system. So this is a very unique thing. As we have just learned, we talk about the 7 characteristics of a living organism, things that you see and know that this thing or is a living thing and this thing is not a living thing. So, new properties emerge at each level in the biological hierarchy. Now, life evolved from that of these evolutionary processes over the period of time, right? So you understand that life emerged from the most fundamental level to the higher level of its hierarchy. That is from the fundamental level of a molecule to that of the most complex level, which is the biosphere, right? So life can be studied at different level from molecule to the entire living planet. That is, you start to understand life, you start to understand the study of biology from the level of molecule that is from the molecular level of a living organism to the entire planet that we live in, right? So the study of life can be divided into different levels of biological organization. That is it. We also already said that we study biology from that of the emergence of properties, right? So these properties can be divided and studied at different biological organization. That is, you study life from molecular level. There are some organisms at the molecular level, some at the level of organs, some at the level of organelles, etc. Right? So life is a very complex, it's very complex, and we start to understand that even as from the most fundamental level, you observe to the complex level that there are variety and different forms of life that are involved based on those organizations, right? So here is some example of what I'm talking about. We're talking about biosphere, right? So the biosphere, if you look at the hierarchy of organization of life, how life is organized and emerge, you look at from the ascending order, you look at the biosphere. Now the biosphere is that part of the earth where we have life exists, right? So look at the biosphere, and we also look at the ecosystem, we look at the communities, and we look at the population, we look at the organisms, we look at the organs, we look at the tissues level, at the cell level, we look at the organelles level, we look at the atoms level, and we also look at the molecules level. So let's get to them bit by bit. Now, at the level of biosphere, you observe that there are concentrations of oxygen or concentrations of other gas that are needed in the atmosphere to help us survive in on Earth, right? So that is the biosphere. So at the biosphere is like the combination of all of the forms of what living organisms, right? So now we get to the ecosystem. Now the ecosystem is another higher level of organization of life. That is, in the ecosystem, this is where you have the all living organisms and those non-living components in the way they interact with their I mean those living organisms and those non-living organisms interaction with their environment. So that is you having a living organism in this area, and the living organisms and those non-living component of the environment interact with their surroundings, right? So that is the ecosystem. So within the ecosystem, you find the plants, the animals, you find a whole lot of microorganisms that are living there, and also within that ecosystem, you find their non-living components. That is the rock, sand, those abiotic factors, and then all interacting with their non-living environment, all those living organisms interacting with their non-living environment. So another level is a community. So you see that at from the ascending order, now we are getting to descending. So we know our ecosystem is more higher in terms of complexity, but now when we look at community, is a particular or living organisms form within. Or living organisms form or within a particular ecosystem. So in a particular ecosystem, where you find organisms, that area is a community. So a community, you have, like, take for example, you have about 1,000 sheep that are living here, and humans, about 1,000 humans that are living here. That particular part of the ecosystem become a community. Then below the community, we have population, right? So a population is a particular species of living organisms in in a particular area, right? So a population, as we mean, what do I mean by particular species of living organisms? You take for example humans, right? Humans can occupy a particular community, and that particular area become a population. Then you have deers. There are certain part of the ecosystem that you go and see a particular group of species live. That particular group of species definitely become our population. And then we have an organism. Organism is an individual living thing. For example, you and I, the plants, the animal, individually, we refer to them as organisms. So at the organisms level, you are not discussing, not grouping now like population where you have group of species or particular group of particular species, and not like community where you have in a group of living organisms in a particular ecosystem. No, this time you are discussing an individual form of life at a more complex level, right? Individual form of life at a most complex level. Now, so we look at the next one here. We look at the organs and organ system. That is at so one thing I want you to understand is that at each of this level, and most especially beginning from the organisms, you will understand that there at each of these level there are organisms that function at each of these levels. So there are some organisms that just functions at organ level, some function at a systemic level, like we human, right? Human will function at both organ systems level, right? And we look at tissue level, right? There are some organisms that are like that just function at a tissue level. So right here you see this tissue of a plant, right? Or plant tissue, and we look at the cells, right? So when we say about tissue, the tissue is a group of specialized cells that work together, carrying on a specific function within the human body. For example, in our body, we have a connective tissue, right? That we have like a good example of the connective tissue is the blood that flows through our veins. Is a good example of connective tissues. We have a muscular, epithelial tissue. We is epithelial tissue, that is those tissues that covers our form within our skin, that covers our entire body, right? So looking at the cell level, there are other organisms that function at cell level. Take for example, we look at bacteria. That bacteria function as at a cell level, right? You look at bacteria, you look at viruses, you look at fungus. These are organisms that function at a cell level. Then we know that the cell, basically, we discussing on living organism fundamental aspect to it higher or complexity level. We know that the most fundamental side that we all discuss is the cell, right? That is the basic structural and functional unit of all life. That is, it gives rise to structure, it gives rise to the function, right? That is what we mean by emergence of what of life, because T cells will give rise to tissues, and that is another form of life at that level. And then tissues can give rise to organ system, then the organ system can give rise to an organisms, then an organism gives rise to what we call population, because we say one of the characteristics of a living organism is to reproduce. So in the process of reproduction during evolution, you find out that you have more organisms in the ecosystem forming communities. You see that? That's good. So at the below the level of cell, we have what we call organelles. Now within cells, there are some organisms that functions based on their organelles. So organelles, for example, this this organelle you are seeing here, and we have a chloroplast. We in a plant we have a chloroplast. We have a vacuum. We have we yeah, we have a vacuum. We have a whole lot of structures that are formed within the plant, right? We have the cell wall of the plant. We have etc. So at that level, in a animal, we have the ribosomes, we have the mitochondria, we have the lysosome, we have the nucleus. Likewise, the plant has a nucleus also. So, these are all organelles. These are little pocket-like materials formed within the cell that function to give rise to a cell, right? Then below that level, we have what we call atom, right? So we all know that on Earth, all living organisms, uh, everything on Earth that occupies space and that has mass and occupies space, they are called um the contain matters, right? So atoms are those basic components of a matter, right? So all living organisms are made of what? An atom. That is, they are the most fundamental building level of a cell, right? So we look at molecules, right? These are from molecular. So atoms, within an atom, you have a molecules, right? So that is it. Now we just going to give an overview. This of biosphere, and like we talk about the ecosystem. As you can see, the entire living, because you see that the plants are rare, the plants, animals are all within this ecosystem. You find plants, animals, humans, right? So this ecosystem here basically is all living organisms in their non-living environment that they interact with, right? So like you see the water, you see the ground, the atmosphere, right? So you look, the next thing here is we looking at is the community. So at the community level, we said that the community is that area where all living organisms live within a particular ecosystem, right? So that particular place becomes a community. So next we have a population. So that is the population, as previously said, that the population is a particular species of living organisms formed within an ecosystem, right? So there's a difference between the community, in a population. Community is all living organisms in a particular ecosystem. But now, for the population, you are looking at a species. That means a particular living organism formed within a community or an ecosystem, right? So the next one here is the organisms. This is a tree, and this tree is an organism, well structured, beginning from its fundamental level to the level of organ system, right? Because you observe this tree has a stem, it has a root, then you know that a functional at of organ system level. That is, we have tissues within these stems and these leaves. We have transporting systems, that is the phylum, xylem, all those things that form within the plant, right? So this makes very unique organisms, and on organisms you have those characteristics of life that we discussed. So this level is an organ system level, right? So what we do mean by organ system? If you look at this leaf, the leaf is an organ of an organism. This leaves here, it has a tissue, it has a cell, it has organelle, it has more fundamental atom level and molecule, right? So like the leaf tissue that we are looking at, this is a leaf tissue. You see that there's a leaf tissue we are looking at. So below the leaf tissue we also have the cells within the leaf, right? So you see that. So we also have the organelles formed within the leaf. That is it. And below the organelle level, there is some atoms within the organelles that are bonding together, right? So molecules that are bound together in this leaf that give rise to an atoms. These are the molecules you are seeing here. These molecules that I'm pointing the mass on. So these are molecules that form together to get structure to an atom, right? So emergent properties. Emergent property result from arrangement and interaction of parts within the system. Yes, that's what we just discussed. Emergent property characterize non-biological entity as, for example, a functioning bicycle emerge only when only all the necessary parts connect in correct way, right? So if you look at the bicycle as a non-living non-living emergence, you will observe that this bicycle cannot function properly if there is no rings for tires. That is, you have to get two tires, and you have to get a seat on the bicycle. You have to get a head. You have to get all those necessary things that are needed on the bicycle. Therefore, the emergent properties are those things that comes together, interact to form a system and give a unique a structure. In terms of human, we say give our organisms. In terms of non-living stuff, then we characterize it by the kind of property that make it, right. So power and limitation of reductionism. So let's look at that. Now, reductionism is the reduction of complex substance to simpler components that are more manageable to study. So scientists thought of understanding how life is like, and how can we, clearly study this particular phenomenon. How can we understand at the most fundamental level? Because if you look at the biosphere, just look at everything that is within the biosphere, and then you are concerned as it relates. How can I properly understand this particular structure that this particular thing that I'm seeing, right? So scientists saying that the best way is to use what we call reductionism, right? So reductionism will look at complex substance and start to go below that complex substance, going deeper into the complex substance to know the most fundamental or origin level of that complex substance. Like we just discussed, we said the earth contains a biosphere, right, where life exists. So below the biosphere you have what? The ecosystem. And within an ecosystem, or in the same biosphere, right, you have what we call a community. Now within the community you have a population. Then within a population we have an individual organisms that are in the population. Then within individual organisms you have an organ systems that help to make all these things work together to make the organism. Then within the organ system you have a tissues that work to form the organs that systems. And then at the tissue level below it you have what we call cells, and below the cell level we also have what we call organelles, and below this organelle, see reductionism, right? Reductionism is to reduce those complex things that look difficult, is to reduce it little by little until you go at the most simple level. For example, in what we are discussing here, the molecular structure of DNA. So if you want to understand the molecular structure of DNA, you must first go at the level of you see the organism, right? You look at our human, and then you must go at the molecular level of that human to understand the DNA. That is, you must know that within that organism there is an organ system. You must investigate one of the organ system. You must go to the organ of that system. You must go to beyond the organ of that system to the tissue level. You must also be able to go to the cell level. From the cell level now you get to the organelle level. So within the organelles level, you understand that there is a particular organelle within the cell called the nucleus that hosts the DNA. So you don't just go into the nucleus and see the DNA. So when you get to the nucleus, you have to see a dense thread-like material called the chromatins. So within the chromatins, you have chromosomes that thread-like structures them that are fold together to form the DNA, the genetic materials wrapped together, right? So that genetic material now you have to go deeper. That is a nucleotide strand you'll be seeing. Then we say it's it is a DNA or an RNA of an organism. And then when you go below that, you find out that within the DNA there are information included in the DNA that we refer to as the genes. So in that genes, at the most molecular level, you observe that the DNA, the genes, or this DNA contain what we call the it has a phosphate group, it has a carbon sugar, it has or nitrogen basis that is connected to form the DNA, giving a specific gene, which is three DNA sequence making a gene. See that? So at the molecular level, you observe that reductionism make you to understand that all of this thing is complex. You must know it by reducing it to the simplest level, by removing those bigger parts that make it look so difficult, right? So we say an understanding of biology balances reductionism with the study of emerging properties. For example, new understanding comes from studying the interaction of DNA with other molecules. Sure. So